when Montech reached out about one of their cases some time ago, they also mentioned that they now got a keyboard. And they also mentioned that they really liked it. Like, really liked it. So I said, sure, we will check it out. This is the Montech MKey, a keyboard with probably the easiest name to understand ever. The MKey exists in two different color options. The Freedom one in a turquoise type blue with a white bottom side, and the Darkness, a black one, makes really sense, but in a red underside. Both of these exist in either a full-size version and 10 keyless. And for each and every combination you can choose between the yellow, red and brown Jadron G Pro 2.0 switches. The one that we got is the full-sized Darkness with the Jadron yellow switches. And already here you may be able to see something that made me wonder quite a lot. The caps are blue. On every, and I mean every image portrayed online, the caps are black. Definitely black. Sure, you got the slightly bluish ones with some red highlights, but generally the majority of the caps were definitely black. Whilst in reality, they are blue or bluish, with some being lighter blue and then the red highlights. And in the beginning I suspected that there might have been some subversion with different keycaps, and I spent some hours researching, but no, once I got far enough down into the rabbit hole, into the Instagram reels, no, the Darkness has bluish keycaps, not black, like all the images suggested. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not an issue or anything bad. I just didn't expect it. It's a design choice and I'm fully okay with it. Even looks kind of cool in my opinion, but who the hell did the color grading for the online images? Anyway, out of the box, the MKey comes in a relatively high quality packaging containing the keyboard with an additional piece of protective plastic. Apart from the obvious, we'll also get a miniature manual, which will come in extremely handy, but more on that later. And then we also got a keycap and switch removal tool, because yes, both are exchangeable to your very liking. Very nice. And of course, a 190mm long braided and very good feeling and looking USB Type-C to USB Type-A cable, which can be routed either to the left, right or out in the back of the keyboard. And as a glorifying end, we also got a bunch of exchangeable keycaps to transform the keyboard into a fully Japanese style theme, you know, to pair with your waifu card. Now, before we begin covering this, I wanted to mention that so far, I personally do not have a huge catalog of already reviewed keyboards that I can access to form an opinion. So far, I have basically everything that goes in or around the PC. But as far as keyboards are concerned, this is the very first video that I talk about one. That is not to say that I don't know anything about them. I've been using numerous ones throughout my life. Some notable mentions would be, that I recall, would be the Logitech G series back then, the G11, G19 and some other G in between. Then I had some Roccat mechanical ones for some time, followed by my biggest waste of money, the Logitech Craft, such an expensive keyboard for such a software nightmare. And then I jumped onto my Logitech G915, which for some reason isn't particularly liked, like as a whole, but I like it. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is I am not an expert yet. I won't be able to distinguish all switches by touching them alone. And I have not yet done the process of building your own keyboard from scratch. But what I do have is my small catalog of my past experience. And because a keyboard is one of these things that are extremely subjective, like you either like it or you don't, that shouldn't be such big of an issue. However, there are still some things that can be measured, like how many keys can be pressed at once. And on that metric, the MKey performed flawlessly. I can walk forwards while shifting path to the right, while spamming some spell, and for good measurement, I can also start jumping and also switch to another action bar. Or I can just face roll all over the keyboard. So for gaming, I don't see an issue here, and I didn't find any combination that for some reason wouldn't register a keystroke. Another quite cool aspect about this keyboard are the feet. By default, the keyboard is sitting on these rubberized feet, giving us a 3-degree tilt. Using the small legs in the center pushes it up to 6 degrees, and using the big ones gives us a maximum of 9 degrees. The cool thing about this approach for me is, of course, giving us the choice, but also the quality of the implementation. Because every angle has its own rubber underside to provide slipping over the table, and to my surprise, no matter what angle I chose, the flex of the keyboard, or the general stability of everything, isn't compromised in the very least. Like, even on the small and thinner feet, it's rock solid, and the higher angle doesn't change anything at all. Another little aspect worth talking about is how the cable is routed, because yes, it's a cable bound keyboard. You basically have three options: straight out, left or right. But the most important thing for me here are these little hooks. They are gripping the cable, and by gripping I mean they will destroy it. Once you've chosen a position, you can press in the cable into that hole, and once it is in there, it won't come loose. Like, the hooks will destroy the braided material before letting go of the cable. And that is a good thing. You don't want to have the cable loose and fall out all the time and then slip underneath the keyboard. That just sucks, and it's a waste of time, and this one will stick. However, you kind of need to keep this in mind for the central position, because it was very natural to me to first put it into the slot and then try to connect it, which will just end up destroying the braided cable. So first connect the USB-C, then slot in the cable, and to remove it, just use the reverse order. Another point to mention here is that you are able to change the cable for an alternative one. Montech did design the plug itself with so much excess grippy material so that I can easily swap it for one of my cable mods. And it's not like it's going to fall off just because it doesn't have that additional material around the plug. Just keep it smaller than the original plug and you are good to go. However, the cable itself is far too thick to go into any of these exit holes. Sure, I can eliminate the issue by always keeping the keyboard at a higher angle, but this is something to keep in mind if you were planning to go the full custom route. And in case you are planning to do this, the USB-C plug should be 11 by 6 mm or smaller, and the cable should not exceed 3.8 mm in diameter. There you go. And now let's finally get to the actual keys. On all MKeys, the keycaps are arranged in an MDA profile, meaning that the most central line, so caps lock, ASD and so on, are positioned the lowest, while everything above and below that line will be slightly tilted towards that line and raised to give everything a good angle to reach, assuming that you keep your fingers on that straight line. I personally did not have that experience yet, it was the first time for me, but I like it. It's not a groundbreaking thing, but having used the keyboard for some time now, like 2 weeks, I can definitely feel the difference. It's very subtle, but if you are really bound to that central line and you keep your fingers straight and you have very flat or completely flat keycaps, the amount of pressure needed up and down of that central line will be minimally bigger because you are pressing it or are pressing on them at an angle, or you're trying to... The angle you're pressing at is not the one that the keys will go. But with these slightly angled keys, this effect is minimized because the form of the keycap partially absorbs some of the angle, if that makes sense. It's very, very, very subtle, but it is noticeable if you switch it from one keyboard to the other one. And it may have helped me doing fewer mistypes if I write really, really quick, but I'll never be able to accurately measure that and create a number out of it. That being said, if you're using Dvorak, this must be gold. I can type Dvorak, I should learn Dvorak, but that seems like something, a combination really worth trying out. Back to my experience. It's actually quite good. I wouldn't say it's better or less exhausting than typing on my Logitech, but in general, I ended up liking how the keys are arranged. It took an hour or two to get used to everything, but from there everything became second nature. If I were to arrange my last 3 keyboards, the Cast, the Logitech G915 and this one here, on the podium, the Montech definitely takes the first place in terms of typing experience. I just prefer the switches on my G915. I like them to be a bit more clicky. That being said, not everything is gold. The one thing that I disliked the most about this keyboard is how or what they printed on the keycaps. If we take a look at the manual, the F keys also double as a direct command in combination with the FN key in the bottom right corner. This is nothing unusual, there are armies of keyboards that do this. My issue is that they haven't printed anything on the keycaps or around it. So you can read it in the manual sheet, but once you throw it away, how the hell will you ever remember which F key does what? I really believe that printing it on the cap or above it would have quite helped in the long run. But on the topic of printed stuff, the font used on the keyboard is, in general, is a bit more of a comic type thing. It's not Comic Sans, nobody is that cruel, but due to the nature of comic fonts in general, some things sometimes look a bit odd. Like the B keycap looks bold to me, while the V looks semi-bold, and these two just look regular, which is just weird in general. But what's flat out wrong to me is that the alt text is lower than the Windows or Control on, plus Control isn't centered on its own, print is a bit higher than the rest, and page down is a bit higher, even whilst page up is perfectly straight. The printing quality in general could have been better, definitely better. Print aside, the build quality of the whole keyboard is really top notch. It is by far the sturdiest keyboard I have ever had in my hands, and it should be. At its slimmest point, we are looking at 2.2 centimeters, which will become thicker until it reaches 2.7 at the top. And to top it off, this thing comes in at slightly over 1.5 kilograms. Which I would love to show you on my scale instead of just trusting the spec sheet, but somebody used my only scale and forgot it on top of a kitchen stove while it was on. What I'm trying to say is this thing is heavy and doesn't bend at all, or in the very least significantly less than my Logitech G915. But be prepared that this one is a very heavy boy, like this is heavy. Yeah, I don't need this, this can stand on its own. Like this is really heavy. As far as extras are concerned, the MKey does offer quite some things. We have, for example, this turnable knob, which clicks at every step. This one can be used to adjust either the volume, a zoom function on whatever program you're using at the moment, and RGB, because of course there is RGB. There are God knows how many LEDs underneath these keys, and you can switch through 18 preset modes, including pretty much everything I expected, from permanent glowing Udicon poop to the wave effect, and even the one from TikTok found its way in. All in all, the RGB implementation is perfectly fine, nothing extravagant or eye cancer inducing, and I think it's very well executed. On a small side note, macros are a thing. If that's what you're into, sure, I wouldn't personally do it. I like to do my stuff on software, but you can do it on here too. A very small but funny mini addition. The function and F12 combo is called the boss key. Go back to homepage, which will just take you back to a desktop no matter what you're doing, which I just found hilarious. And before we get to my final thoughts, how does it sound? As a product, quite impressive. On the positive sides, we got the sturdiness, definitely the sturdiness, and general build quality. The MDA profile was a very nice addition for me, and the angle implementation or the feet of the keyboard are very, very well executed. The design is cool, and I like how strong that cable is kept in place. On the negative side, however, I still believe that they should have printed the special functions somewhere at least. You will not keep that sheet around forever. Biggest negative point for me is the printing quality issue. Sure, it's a comic font, I get that, but a bunch of keys just look too different to make sense to me. Or the print position is off, or one is bold, the other one is definitely not. It's just a weird combi. A not really negative, but definitely worth updating part for me is just the online images. Sure, all of them are just 3Ds and not actual pictures. I know how that works, but just make new ones with the correct color. It's neither a positive nor a negative thing. It's just you don't want to have customers to expect a black product and then get a blue one. That's exactly how you generate a huge mess in your review section where everybody will just type this product does not look like it was described, and then can easily be avoided by just having the right pictures, especially because even on Amazon they are all black. It is definitely not black. But overall, I am very, very happy with it. Some smaller detailed issues, but honestly for 119 euros, I think it's is. It's even quite a good price given its sturdiness, especially compared to basically any other major brand on the market. Like my G915 was like 190 bucks with absolutely zero more functions, and it feels like a bunch of papers stacked on top of each other compared to this behemoth. But okay, for today this is going to be it for Montech and their MKey Darkness _blue. At this point, a huge thank you to them for sending it over. And this was also it for our very first video about a keyboard. It was quite fun to make, and with that, the next entry in the catalog to compare the next one to. Maybe we'll focus more on keyboards, who knows. On a side note, we also have a Discord server, so if you want to join, the link is down below. And of course, we still have channel memberships, so if you're looking for a good way to sell your soul for an RG Poop emoji, that's a pretty good way to go. Additionally, you can rest assured that the income will not only keep the channel afloat, but will also serve to get one of these color measuring devices, because we got to know how not black this blue truly is. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to continue, have a look at our take on another Montech product, the Air 903 Max. What is more Air than Air? Exactly, Air Max. Hope to see you on the next one. Bye bye.